Hello, Maikwas, Yapta and whatever it is that you say, and welcome to another episode of Scary Stories to Tell from the Res. And for those of you that are just joining us, our brand new listeners, if you will, I'd like to welcome you to Scary Stories to Tell from the Res. And if you haven't heard it before, you're in for a treat now. Scary Stories to Tell from the Res is a paranormal discussion podcast that focuses on stories, mainly scary ones, and not the ones from your aunties, but from the experiences within the indigenous community, or more specifically, the reservation, the res, our hometown stead, whatever it is that you call it. So come sit down with me as we sit by the glow of the fire, as we share stories that our elders warned us not to tell. But if you get a little scared, you can always scoot a little closer. Just do me a favor, make sure that's still me that you're sitting next to. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to everybody that checked out the new merchandise line that we've got going on. As we announced last week, we have t-shirts available for everybody. Just go to twistedbearboutique.com, click on the Scary Stories to Tell from the Res tab on the site, and you yourself can order a Scary Stories to Tell from the Res t-shirt and wear it proudly, because they're limited number in stock as of right now, but we're working on more. What else would you guys like to see? Any suggestions? I'm always open. Well, as we talked about last week, we talked about possibly doing theme shows about specific subjects, like our skinwalker stories, because who doesn't have an abundance of those? I always wanted to hear tribal lore, sort of tribal legends, hometown stories that your moms, your dads, your uncles and aunties, cousins, big sisters told you about to scare you as kids, that probably still scare you now. I know mine still scare me. The stories, not the aunties. Although. Well, since I talked about that last week, an interesting thing has happened, because I got a huge amount of stories about Kachina Dolls. Now, for those of you that don't know what Kachina Dolls are, we're going to spend a little time educating ourselves. But get ready to hear some stories. Some hair-raising, chilling stories. But before we do that, I want to jump into one story in particular that came across my attention while perusing TikTok. Remember, guys, you guys can actually send in your stories to me directly at scaryrezstories@gmail.com. But hit us up on our Facebook page, and you guys can submit your stories through there. I'm always checking out groups on Facebook to gather more stories. I'm always story hunting, so you can touch base with me there. You can write it out and email it to us. You can also set up a time to try to record it with me, and we can set up maybe a phone interview. I know I'm trying to get something for everybody to call in, but we'll worry about that when it happens. You guys can also record them yourselves. I found that if you record them through TikTok, like this first story of the night, it tends to work out a little better. And remember, you guys can all remain anonymous if you choose to be. All I ask is that you let me know what reservation that this story happened on, what tribe, and tell me your stories. Remember, the more details, the more scary it gets. So before we kick off our Kachina stories, let's hear one story from TikTok. Take it away.
Here's another res story. This is another IHS story from Oklahoma. For my non-natives, IHS is Indian Health Services, which is a hospital. One night when I was around 9, I got really sick and my mom had to take me to IHS. There were 2 other people in the waiting room, and I just remember feeling like I was going to throw up. So I told my mom that I was going to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom and sat on the floor just in case I threw up. All of a sudden the door flew open. A little boy came running in and told me to be quiet. He crouched down next to me and tried to hide his laughter. I was young, but he was definitely a few years younger than me. So I asked him who we were hiding from. He said he was hiding from the nurse, and that she always played games with him to try and make him feel better. I heard them call my name, so I told him I had to go. When I left, he ran out of the bathroom and down the hall. There aren't very many rooms in IHS, so I ended up sharing with another patient. There was a curtain between us. My mom went outside to fill out some paperwork. The same little boy came running into my room around the curtain. When I pulled the curtain back, I was shocked. Like for part 2.
Hey, thanks for that story. We'll have to check back in later on to see if she even made a part 2. IHS alone is a scary story. Going in there, come on, we've all been there. What's more scarier than the doctors? Or the possible ghosts that linger? I'd say the receptionist. Good morning, what do you want? I shouldn't talk like that. They're always real nice to me. Well, like I said at the top of the hour, I got quite a bit of Kachina doll stories, and so I figured that I would dedicate today's show to the Kachina dolls and trying to learn a little bit about what the Kachina dolls are. Now, the Kachina dolls were actually originate in Hopi culture. The name Kachina actually comes from a word in Hopi, Kachi, which means spirit. Kachina dolls symbolize Ketsanam, or spirits of nature. Now, the tribes in the Southwest actually believed that aspects of nature could be personified by Ketsanam, or Ketsanam. This includes rain, crops, animals, ancestors, and more. You know, the men of the tribe would actually dress up as Kachinas during the ceremonies and perform dances, and they actually even carved dolls to symbolize the various Kachinas. Now, for the record, I'm Northern Ute, so trying to pronounce the Hopi language is a little tougher for me. So please don't berate me in the comments. I barely know my own culture, so my own cultural language, if you will. It just got sad. Even more scarier. Wow. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring down the mood there. As I was saying, the main tribe that actually used the Kachina dolls were the Hopi. However, other tribes actually also used them as well. The Aguna, Zuna, and Laguana pueblos included Kachina dolls in their own cultural heritage. Now, most recently, the Navajos were the ones to incorporate Kachina dolls into their culture with these dolls. You can actually identify a Kachina doll by its material and the symbols associated with its clothing, its decorations, the headdress, everything on it. And that can actually help you figure out and determine which Kachina they're trying to portray. The Kachina dolls are actually made of a cottonwood root. Now, since cottonwood trees were known for their ability to find water even in dry climates, this symbolizes the conduit that Kachina dolls become between the people and spirits. The cottonwood root is also easy to carve, and most of the oldest dolls were carved from a single cottonwood root. Now, today the dolls are actually made from multiple pieces of cottonwood. After they're carved, the dolls actually get decorated with things like overwell whitewash, some detailed painting and decorations for their facial features, some clothing, as well as like created fabric, jewelry that's actually painted or made from metal, like actual jewelry, and handcrafted objects and props like rattles, knives, tools, and are actually decorated with the fur and feathers as well. There's actually over 250 types of Kachina dolls that are associated with Ketsanam, so maybe we might be able to identify each Kachina, because I do have a list here. But now that we've educated ourselves, let's jump into the first story of the night. Well, I'm a Navajo and I do construction, and this one night on the night shift, me and another Navajo guy from Page, Arizona, just to pass the time, we started exchanging ghost stories. I told him my stories, and he told me his. Now, a group of him and other kids actually seen a Kachina when they were kids. He actually told me the name of the town, but I forgot. It's one of the towns on Interstate 491 from Gallup, New Mexico to Shiprock. If you haven't been there, the landscape is actually pretty flat on one side and has multiple small mesas and mountains on the other side. It was on top of one of these mesas where the group of kids were playing with a pair of binoculars, and what they all seen was a being beside a small tree in the distance. But when they looked through the binoculars, he said that they could only explain as a Kachina, with its arms resting on the ground as well as its body. He said it looked exactly like a traditional Kachina doll. It had the headdress and face mask, and one thing that he said also was it was wearing a rainbow around its neck with two small clouds at the end. It was either white or painted white. It even had Navajo traditional jewelry on. Now, the thing that made them run was that the Kachina was actually looking at the group of kids on the top of the mesas and was beckoning and calling for them with its fingers to come down, closer. And apparently, this wasn't going to be the first time, too. Around the same area, he actually told me that he had seen another one, but this one was in the shape of a dog. But this one was wearing a long piece of cloth hanging between its legs and had bells on its legs. And again, this one had Navajo traditional jewelry on too. But this one he's seen the feet and its footwear too. It actually wore moccasins. He said that he saw it running away when he noticed the thing watching him and he gave chase. It actually ran to the back of the double wide trail, and when he made it around the corner, he saw it jump into the ground and disappeared. So it sounds like these two Kachinas we might be able to identify. I don't know a lot about the name of the Kachina dolls that they have made out there because everyone is really specific. But I've kind of looked through this list. If you go to pueblodirect.com, you can actually go through and try to search the different types of Kachina that are documented, as well as you'll find a lot of history there too. Like I said, the Kachina dolls are a bridge not only between the spiritual world and mortals, but also between Hopis and non-Hopis. Each year, Kachinas come, they walk upon the earth, and they dance to bring life and renewal. With the Kachinas return to the spirit world at the end of the planting, they would actually return with prayers of the Hopi that they might all continue on this earth for another round in the circle of life. But as I look through this, I'm trying to find what they described in there, and I know that he said that one looked like a dog. So I'm wondering if what he was seeing was possibly people that were dressed up as Kachinas, or he actually seen the Kachina itself. Each Kachina actually has different meanings, so I'm not sure how to interpret that.
This is Justin Levitt, a.k.a. Justin St. Native, coming at you from Scary Stories to Tell from the Res with Jordan Lone Bear, reminding y'all to keep it paranormal.
All right, everybody, let's get right back into it. We're talking about the Kachina dolls, as this listener has sent in quite a few stories to tell today. So we're dedicating today, like we said at the top of the hour, to the Kachina dolls and Kachina stories. So let's get back into the stories. I also got one from the Zuni Nation, too. Now, this guy told me, I know his name, but for this story, he'll just be this guy I know. Well, this one night again, we were exchanging stories, and he told me this story that happened to him one night. He said that he was getting shit from his wife and decided to take a drive on the back roads, but first stopping by the closest alcohol store. He said he was drinking alone on the back road this night. He parked his ride in the middle of nowhere and passed out. From there, he said that he woke up to the sound of talking and what seemed like singing and chanting and heard bells. When he looked up, he seen again what he described as a traditional Kachina doll in the moonlight. This being said, he said it was tall, extremely tall. When he told me this part, he kind of shook, and then he said from there, he hit the gas pedal and hauled ass out of there, and immediately sobered up and drove back home. The wife met him on the couch. He told me she was still kind of steamed until she seen his face. From there, he told her what happened. Now, this story, he didn't explain or describe what the Kachina looked like besides the fact that it was a Kachina. The only thing that he said was he saw just the thighs and that it placed a hand or hit the roof and looked down into the window of the truck. Oof. I can't imagine waking up to seeing something that you are trying to figure out. You're looking right at it, and with it being that close to look into your vehicle, yeah, I would have hauled ass out of there too. Well, at least he made it home and he's safe. The next story actually comes from the listener's uncle. This one happened about 30 miles from Zuni, New Mexico, in a town called Rama, New Mexico. It's a small Mormon town. My aunt married a Norwegian man, and they decided to build a house with my uncle's help. And the process of building the house, he and my grandmother saw a 9-foot tall Kachina doll come out of nowhere, and my uncle showed me where it once walked. And again, he said that it was white. And like everyone else, he said it looked exactly like a Kachina doll that people would have in their homes. To make the story better, I personally took over residence over the house that they built over 30 plus years ago. Now that's some paranormal lover stuff. Moving into a house like that. We're definitely seeing a pattern with these Kachinas being larger than life, and I can't imagine seeing something that tall at all, period, without freaking out. Big ups to you for taking over and moving into that house. With COVID-19 cases declining to low levels across Indian country, it feels like the pandemic is now behind us. However, COVID-19 is still spreading in our communities and new variants are still emerging that could spread more quickly or cause more severe illness. Many states have begun to end mask mandates and other COVID-19 prevention measures, but we recognize that the pandemic is still impacting communities across Indian country. As we move forward, it is important that we continue to protect those that are precious to us by following local guidance and being respectful of those around us. With tribal sovereignty and local differences in COVID spread, some communities may have different rules depending on their needs. So check with your local tribal government or local healthcare provider to learn more about guidance for your community, and do what feels safe and comfortable to protect you and your family in situations where guidance has become more relaxed. Alright, as we move on to the last story of the Kachina Dolls series, I want to thank everybody again for contributing your stories, and thank this listener for giving us this abundance of Kachina Doll stories. It's really got my curiosity piqued more, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. So with my curiosity piqued, let's finish up the last story of the evening of the Kachina Dolls. Alright, this is the last one, but besides these ones being tall, these ones were literally the size of Kachina Dolls, and were literal Kachina Dolls in their home. Now, he told me a story that he had proof of this happening, but sadly the evidence was taken from a medicine man that helped them and also took the dolls. Well, he said that they would leave the house and would come back to their home being destroyed. So as a countermeasure, they actually decided to leave a camera posted up to record if any of the neighbors would climb through the window when they left. What he told me was when they left and went to Walmart and came back, they recorded the Kachina Dolls physically breaking and standing. As they jumped off the entertainment stand, they slid down the window curtains and started jumping up and down on the couch. And in the video, he could see them raising up and down the bow and arrow and dancing with a spear. He only told me that much of what they did in the video. You could hear the vehicle drive up and the people talking. That's when they would climb back up the curtains and stand back in their original position. They watched the video and immediately called a medicine man. He told me what the medicine man did and what happened when he didn't believe the Navajo medicine. But that's a different story in and of itself. Oof. So, thanks again to that listener for sending in all of those beautiful Kachina Doll stories. Now, this last story really does touch base with me because that was the one thing growing up. My mom had a couple of Kachina Dolls, and that was one of the things that she said that they did, or that they were known to do, was that they were known to wake up and play at night, or they would walk around the house at night. So that one's got my hair standing up a little bit. If you have a Kachina Doll story and these inspired you, I want to hear more. I want to hear more about these Kachina Dolls. If you've had any personal experience, not only seeing the larger-than-life ones, the actual Kachinas themselves, or possibly, like the last one, maybe you've seen or had some experiences with these troublesome dolls, if you will. Again, thank you to that listener for all of those beautiful Kachina Doll stories. Now, at the top of the hour, we heard a story from somebody that had had an experience at IHS. It seemed like a pretty normal interaction for an IHS visit. But then again, it is IHS. So let's see just what was so scary about that IHS visit.
Guys, here's part 2 of the IHS story. I pulled back the curtain to find an older woman laying in the bed. She asked me if I was okay. I told her that I had seen a little boy run behind the curtain and I was looking for him. She told me that his name was Coda, and that he'd come back around. He's just naughty, and she laughed a little bit. I apologized for opening her curtain, and she said that any company was welcome, as nobody went to visit her. My mom came back in the room with my medication, and it was time for us to leave. As we were walking out, I stopped one of the nurses and asked her if she'd been looking for a little boy named Coda. She looked at me odd and said, "Did you just say Coda?" She then told my mom that the woman that I had been in the room with used to be a nurse at the hospital, and a long time ago her favorite patient was a little boy named Coda. They weren't aware of the circumstances, but they knew that he had passed away a long time ago. They said every now and then they could hear running and laughing in the hallways, but never saw him. As we were leaving, I heard the old woman laughing. I heard her say, "Coda, go hide and I'll come find you."
Ooh, thank you so much. Go check out Bella Nicole 88 on TikTok. That was the TikToker that let me use the stories those stories anyway. Go check out her TikTok. She does quite a bit of stories out there on TikTok. But, see, I guess I'm lucky to where I am. The IHS that I have, I don't know if anybody's died there. For those of my IHS listeners that listen that are from here in this area that I'm from, I like how I had to break it down. Do you know of anybody that's died in your IHS? Do you know if possibly you've seen them linger? Especially somebody so young, a young spirit like that to still be hanging around, but at least he has some company. All right, everybody. Well, what do you say we finish off the episode? You guys have been amazing, and I love you all. What do you guys say that we finish off the episode tonight with one last story before we put out the campfire, say our blessings, smudge ourselves off, and go home? I think that sounds good to me. So the last song of the last song. I'm a radio DJ again. The last story of the evening has to do with something that could or might be there or might not. Let's find out. This story is from Jasmine Ryan. She says, when my husband and I first dated back in 2014, he stayed the weekend with me out at my mom's place. As you do. It was just a little 2-bedroom trailer about 5 steps off the ground, so you can imagine the height from one of the trailer windows. I had explained to him I don't like going out at night, especially being so close to the woods. Outside you could hear the bugs chittering, the dogs barking, just like here. Then silence. Footsteps were outside, and I told him not to go out. Stay inside. He leaned over and wanted to take his pistol outside as he used to carry. I told him no, and to lay back down. The shadow of whatever was outside went over the entire window. My room was actually closest to the light pole, and it was blacked out when whatever it was crossed by. He laid back down next to me. He said, "Let's go to sleep." Still don't know what it was, and I still won't go out at night, especially there. Oof. So you got to wonder what it was. I mean, being so close to the forest, I mean, there's a lot of spirits, there's a lot of entities that are out in the wilderness because it's undisturbed. Was it a big spirit? Was it a maybe possibly a shapeshifter? Or maybe, just maybe, it was Bigfoot. I'm just speculating at this point. Also, a few stories that I'd like to have is some Bigfoot stories. So if you've got some Bigfoot stories, come on, don't be stingy. Well, I say that's going to finish us out for the night. I want to say thank you again to everybody that has come out and shared your stories. And like I said, Scaryrezstories@gmail.com is where you can send them. You can also hit me up on TikTok under Jordan Lone Bear. I'm always promoting on there as well. And don't forget, you can to check out our merchandise line by checking out our number one sponsor, twistedbearboutique.com. Go check out the major selections that we've revamped and re-added to the collections, including our brand new Killer Bear collection as well. I'm putting my seller hat on, so but also while you're there, you guys can pick up your very own Scary Stories to Tell from the Res merchandise t-shirt. So if you'd like to support this podcast and keep sharing and love to wear our stuff, I'm always putting out new stuff. I'm always working to get brand new things, brand new items out there. So, and like I said, what do you guys want to see? Give me some updates. Give me some suggestions. Well, again, I want to say thank you, everybody. Tonight, I say let's put the fire out before we trail off into the wilderness, into the unknown, if you will. I want to say thank you all, and remind everybody to stay safe, stay blessed, but most importantly, stay scary. We'll see you, everybody. Scary Stories to Tell from the Res is a Lone Bear Productions. All sound media is provided by Pond 5 Media.